Hello, you beautiful people, and welcome to the first ever episode of Stayin Alive with me, Jesse Smith, a podcast about staying afloat in the ever-changing ocean that is the creative arts industry. I am so nervous and excited to bring you this first ever episode of Stayin Alive. I love podcasts, and it's something I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and the coronavirus pandemic was just the kick up the bum I needed to get me started. Over the years, I've been lucky enough to work with some incredible artists, musicians and producers, as well as having friends in other areas of the creative arts, each with their own inspirational stories of how they forged a career in their specific discipline, how they've battled through the tough times, and most specifically, I'm interested in how they continue to do that once they get there. Over the next few weeks and months, I've got an incredible lineup of artists waiting to share their stories with you of how they managed to stay alive by being a creative. So, without further ado, my first guest is a world-renowned guitar god, having worked with the likes of Chris Cornell, Courtney Love, and Don Henley from the Eagles, to name a few, as well as having international notoriety from his hugely successful YouTube channel. He's become one of the world's most loved guitar players. He also happens to be one of the hardest working and nicest people I've ever had the privilege of working with. Speaking to me from lockdown in his studio in Los Angeles, my first ever guest on the pod is Pete Thorn. And I thought, yeah, you were the perfect person to start out with, mate. So thank you so much for doing it.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Firstly, how are you getting on, man? How's everything in lockdown for you? Is your day massively different, I guess, with doing all the videos and YouTube stuff? Can you get on with that?
Yeah, it's really, to be honest, other than the fact that I'm cooking, which is like a whole new experience. Because I think I've eaten every meal out for the last 30 years. But I've learned how to like make good scrambled eggs, and it's this whole new world. Actually, and that aspect of it I'm kind of enjoying, if you can enjoy anything, but making food at home is like, wow, because I'm an idiot when it comes to that. And it's like, well, I actually can do this. So do
you guys have like Deliveroo over there?
Do we have which, sorry? Like
Deliveroo
service?
Yeah, so we have this thing called Deliveroo. Did you come across it when you were over here on tour?
No, but we've got Postmates and similar things that are, for restaurants. Yeah.
So man, my friends all laugh at me because I have an account, and basically I get free delivery because I pay like £7 a month or something. So like sometimes I'll be working at home in my studio and I'll Deliveroo flat white, and it will just come to my door.
So it's not, see, you're just totally used to this stuff.
So I mean, it's terrible for my carbon footprint, but it's good for convenience, you know.
Yeah, so we have that, and I know that you guys have been a little bit more closed down than we've had takeout and pickup delivery at most restaurants has been going the whole time. So it's like you can call a place and put an order in, then stop by and pick it up, generally speaking. And that's been most restaurants here, or get the delivery thing. But and between that and cooking at home and stuff, you know, I mean, I've got the studio, and this is not in my home; it's a separate space. So I go back and forth between this space and my home. But that's really not that much different than what kind of like us musicians, like we hole up in these studios, and we're kind of used to that, like isolating and right, and you know, and random employment and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's given us a bit of a maybe a somewhat of a head start or a jump on things, because we like that adaptability thing. We've had to learn how to do that, because it's like sometimes it's like, you know, if you know what you're doing for the next 2 months as a musician, it's like, whoa, job security.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. And we've lived like that for years and years and years. So anyway, so I think in some ways, but having said that, of course, it's really, really hard on a lot of musicians, because if you make your living mainly doing sessions or mainly on the road, that's stopped. So, or in clubs, that's stopped. So yeah, it's like being somehow, purely by accident in this YouTube world and stuff has given me still the ability to get some work done. And actually, because people are kind of clamoring for stuff to do, things to watch and content. And so it's like, okay, let's make some videos,
Absolutely,
and,
yeah. Have you had shows cancelled on you during this period?
Live gigs?
Yeah.
So what's funny is, of course, we just did the Classic Rock Show 2020 tour.
Yeah.
Finished up. And previous to that, I'd done 2 clinic tours of Europe and of Asia. So I'd been on the road for like 6 months, kind of just like, so like at the end of that last gig in Liverpool, I was like, man, I do not want to see my suitcase for a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
Home. Yeah, I want to go home, come in this room, and like do some work in the studio. And boy, did I ever get my wish. It's like, you be careful what you wish for, because so really I didn't have much on the books for a while. I had a lot of backlog as far as like, I make a lot of videos for different companies for products like guitar pedals and stuff. So it's like I had a lot of that work on the books and ready to dive into that. And it's just like, whoa, then this happened. And, so not a lot. I mean, I had a 1 in-town gig that was coming up, and that got canceled, It was like 2 days before. It was like everything really started locking down. I was like, oh, I guess that's not going to happen. And then, of course, everything just since then. So, I had planned on kind of staying home at least until... I did have it. Okay, there was a tour that was mentioned that it seemed like actually a really cool tour... the big artist that's based in a pop artist from China, actually, and he was doing a tour outside China, going to all like London, Paris, Toronto, Tokyo, like all big cities outside. And he's quite a well known. The gig was at the O2 in London. He's like a big star, like in the Chinese pop community. So it's one of the biggest in that. So I was really kind of actually looking forward to that, and we were just talking about the details of it. And then it was like, okay, that's not going to happen. That was one of the first. So that there was that like a 2-week run with him, and I was kind of looking forward to starting that. That might have been a cool thing, like going down, looking into the future down the road, maybe hopefully working more with him and stuff like that. But so we'll see if that ever comes around again.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Well, let's touch upon what you mentioned about making videos and stuff, because obviously we'll hopefully get onto how you started and everything, but. You mentioned about your YouTube videos and stuff, and I kind of look at you as a pioneer of that scene, really. I mean, you currently sit on, 188,000 subscribers, and you've had something like 36 million views on YouTube. So it's a real kind of success story. And it's allowed you to obviously have this freedom in times like this to be able to just do that and focus on that. And I suppose have the luxury of picking and choosing gigs. So firstly, why did you start doing that in the first place? And when did you realize that it could sort of be a career or an online...
yeah. You could call me the accidental pioneer, because I don't think...
Do you know what I call you? The king of the guitar nerds. That's what I call you.
That's fine. Just don't call me boring, hopefully. But, it's funny. YouTube, I guess, 2005. I watched the first YouTube video the other day, and there was a news report about it saying, first YouTube video hits a certain number of views or whatever. And it was made by one of the founders of YouTube. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys, he only uploaded one video. So on his channel was just that one video. And it was him at the zoo. And it was like with elephants, I think. And it was really funny because the video's got like 90 billion views or something ridiculous, tons of, and it's just this really silly video where he's like, here I am, and I'm here's the elephants, and I'm at the zoo. And so, we think back to 2005, and here's this video. So I started my channel in 2006 because I remember thinking, oh, well, this is kind of cool. Like, you can make videos and then put them up as a musician, I guess, lessons, and, thinking about the possibilities, right? Mm. So the first kind of stuff that I put up were some lessons and also some just sort of, I just gotten a little home studio together. So I had a simple recording interface and a Mac, and I thought, well, I can crank up the guitar and record some tones and stuff, and that'll be interesting because I'm a nerd, like you said, when it comes to that stuff. So I started putting out a few of those, and those videos, like, there wasn't very many people on YouTube then, so it's like they got a few views, and probably 2000. Okay, so 2007, I put up a video where I recorded an amplifier. I just hooked up with the folks at Sir Guitars and Amps, which is my guitar and amp company.
Yeah.
And they had a new amp coming out, and they gave me a nice price on this amp, like an artist deal. And I thought, what can I do to show my appreciation for that? Because it was a really cool little 18-watt head, you know. And I thought, I'll record it, because I'd made a couple of videos already. I thought, I'll just record it, and I'll talk a little bit about it and show the features and stuff like that. And I put that video out, and they did an initial production run of like 200 of those amps, built up 200. And a guy from the company hit me up a couple months later after I'd put this little video out, and he said, hey, you know, we want to thank you for making that video that you put up on YouTube. We've sold the whole run of 200 amps, which for a little company, you know, they've grown bigger now, but, you know, that was their first amplifier with the surname on it that they'd put out. And so they were really just getting into, you know, for that foray. So anyway, they told me that we've sold them all, and we've heard a lot from the dealers and stuff that customers are talking about this video you put out, and it was really helpful for them to make a decision on whether or not they liked the tone and it was for them. And it just seemed to be, and I thought, that's cool. Like, okay, maybe there's something to this. The next year, it's 2008, and I did a lesson on how to play Eruption.
Yeah,
by Van Halen. Yeah.
I've seen you play that a few times now, actually.
Yeah, maybe 31 times, to be exact.
31 times, plus rehearsal.
Yeah, for those that don't know, we did that we did Eruption into Jump by Van Halen in the Classic Rock Show set, and it was always really fun. Nerve-wracking and fun, because you got to do a good job on it for me. You know?
Yeah, but, it was in a kind of a section of the show that was pretty non-stop for you. I was like Bat Out of Hell into Eruption, Jump, and then Thunderstruck, right? Yeah,
boom, 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 all that. But really fun, too, and really good for my playing.
And then Freebird after that, I think.
Yeah, the whole solo.
Yeah. So, yeah, bit of a roast for the fingers.
Fun.
We'll get onto that anyway.
But yeah, so I made this lesson, and I realized quickly, like after I started doing it, like, oh my God, this is going to be difficult, because videos could only be 15 minutes long back then. And I thought there's a lot of notes in this solo. So, I was just explaining every single note, you know, so it became a 5-part series. So it's funny to look at the 5 videos now on YouTube, because the views go down with each successive video, you know, in succession. People like, forget this. I don't want to
that would be me, man. After I get halfway through the first video, I'll be like, fuck this, man.
But I put that out, and it started to get pretty good views, and I sort of forgot about it, and I was playing with Chris Cornell at the time. So I went out, we had a tour coming up, so I went on the road. It was about 8 months later or something, and I was out on the road with him. And somebody came up to me on the street in Portugal, and I was walking down the street in Lisbon, and like pre-show, as I remember, it was like the morning of the gig, going for a walk, and this guy comes up to me, and he pokes me in the chest, you know, with his like finger, and he goes, "Hey, you taught me how to play Eruption," you know, and I was like. Awesome. Blown away by that, like, because I was halfway around the world from where I lived, and that had never happened, where somebody in a you know, far away place knew me for something that wasn't like playing with Chris Cornell or playing with somebody else. You know, I was a sideman to, you know, I'd had some cool gigs and stuff like that, and a little bit of press and things for doing those gigs, but I didn't have no like any solo records out or anything like that at the time. And just the YouTube thing. And so to be recognized by somebody on the street for something that I just made in my apartment with the limited gear that I have and just an idea, that blew my mind. Then a light bulb went off. And that was when I really realized that, oh, wow, there's something to this. Like, there's no middleman. There's no record company. There's no somebody telling you like it's not good enough, or, you need to tweak this or do that better or this better. Because it's really like, poor video quality and no light. I mean, I literally filmed it on the internal camera on an iMac, like I'm, you know, like I'm talking to you on now via Skype.
Sure.
You know? That's how I filmed it. I didn't have a better video camera, and back then those cameras weren't very good, so it doesn't look good. But the information's good in it, and you know, I think I explained it well. I broke it down in a slow, easy to understand manner, so people responded to it. And I just thought, okay, there's really something to this. So that was when the light bulb first went off. And then I started doing more and more of the gear videos for companies. and putting some more lessons up and stuff just randomly. And by about, I would say 2010 or 2011, it was pretty apparent. Like this was actually starting to become a source of income, and the channel was getting subscribers. It's been a long, slow build. I'm not like I know folks that have had channels for 2-3 years that have 1.5 million subscribers. I've got a couple 100,000 on the verge of now, and it's been a long, slow build, but it's great. It's been and this is the one thing that I would say is that my channel is fairly specific towards guitar nerdy people. If you want to learn to play guitar or you're interested in guitar gear, and that was a total accident. Like I geared it that way. Just it's what I was interested in. Had I done it again, I would maybe think about exactly what I was doing a little more, because I've got friends, folks like Leo from Frog Leap Studios, who has this amazing channel where he makes like these great videos that are like sort of like metal covers of pop songs or country songs, and they're really entertaining videos. And he's just a talented guy. He plays everything. He's a great mixer. He sings, he can do it all, and he's really funny, and he makes great videos. So he puts it all into this package. But he's a bona fide, like, independent music star on YouTube. He's one of those guys. I think he's got 2.5 or more million subscribers, and a great career just doing YouTube. Now he appeals, from little kids all the way to grandparents. Doesn't matter who you are, because his videos are funny and fun. And you don't have to be like a guitar nerd to necessarily be into what he's doing. So I always tell people, like, if you want to do YouTube, come up with a great idea and try and make it as broad as you can. Like, make your base as broad as you can. Like you're, for instance, you're doing some videos, on singing technique. That's pretty broad. Sure. There's all styles of music. Anybody could watch your videos. That's into singing and be pretty. Even mine is more like rock guitar. That's kind of like centered on. So it's cool because if you can kind of broaden the base as much as possible, that's something I always recommend.
Absolutely. Well, it was super inspiring because we had these conversations on the tour bus and stuff. And what really kind of hit home with me was when you said, you've got a lot to offer people out there. Just having done my. However many years it is, 15 years of being singing in rock bands, sure. there's simple stuff like people just don't know when they might be 10 years old starting out, and they don't know that you need to plug the XLR into the speaker to connect their microphone. It's the small things, and obviously with me it's kind of more, sort of focusing on doing my covers and doing some technique videos, but like you say, there's billions of people out there that are looking for information, and you just have to make it appeal to those sort of people. But what always gets me about you as well, Pete, is your work ethic, and it's something that's also super inspiring, because we'd be on the tour bus after the show, and you'd be editing together videos that you'd made that day or in the morning, and you'd be doing YouTube live on the bus, and it's super cool, man. But I just, obviously it's the YouTube thing. It must be hard work as well. It's not as simple as just, like you say, just maybe like it was at first, just sticking a camera up and filming it. It takes a lot of work and effort, and I guess the tech behind it and the editing and all that stuff. So
you do have to learn a little bit about the world of, video editing and that kind of thing. But it's really pretty easy these days. And it's amazing, like, what a Mac comes with. Like I say, the Mac had an internal camera and an iMovie, and that's how I got started. And some of the videos I did on that iMac with the internal camera and iMovie, which just came with the thing for free, those videos have like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views now on YouTube. So I did, one for how to play Dear Prudence by the Beatles. I did another one for how to play Paranoid Android. Those videos are like 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 views or something like that, as along with the eruption videos. So it doesn't matter about, you've probably got the stuff you need. I mean, on an iPhone, you can actually edit videos these days, and people do and make, great stuff. So with a little bit of getting into the tech world and figuring it out, you've probably got everything you need. And it's really, like, I sort of only know how to use the stuff just good enough to do what I do. Like Final Cut Pro, I watched, a little course for like That's what I use for video editing now. And I watched I probably watched 2 hours of instruction total on Final Cut Pro. It's like, okay, I know how to do this and this. Got it. Good enough. I can make my videos now. And I should really probably take a course. But anyway, yeah, work ethic. I mean, to me, it's like fun. It's really fun to get into. So it's not like, I mean, I really enjoy it kind of in a way. I put on the headphones and it's just being creative in another way.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you enjoy doing that stuff? Because obviously that must help.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, it's like, and you get that feeling of satisfaction when you watch it and you go, yeah, this is cool. I think and then you just can throw it up there in the world, and it's out 2 minutes later. You upload it to YouTube, boom, there it is, and then people either like it or they don't. But it's pretty fun. Recently, I did this video. And it's, once again, it's such a, super guitar geeky, nerdy thing. But one of the things about the shutdown right now is a lot of people have gotten into doing videos. So Steve Vai, who was like a hero of mine growing up, I was able to interview via a Skype call, actually, and capture that video and interview him about this amplifier I have of his, which is sitting right here, which he recorded a lot of records with, from the late 80s and toured with and stuff, Daily Roth and Whitesnake and all these bands. This was one of the amps that was out there with him during those times. So I did a whole video on this amp and how he got it and making these records in the late 80s that he would have used this on and stuff. And it was a lot of work. I worked for a week and a half on this video. Interviewed my other friend Dave Friedman about it, because this amplifier is a Marshall that's been modified by a guy that was a legendary dude in the San Fernando Valley. It used to modify. He was like the LA amp, one of the gurus, Awesome. So the amp's got some history, and it's like a little piece of rock history. So I made a whole video about it, and it was a lot of work. I mean, if you look at the Final Cut Pro at the edit, all the the edits in there and the chops up in the audio and doing everything, I was like, God, this was a lot of work. But I put it out, and it got 40,000 views or something in one day, and it's at 188 now, I think. And it's just so rewarding. It feels great, you make sense, because I'm so nerdy about it's just nerd stuff, but people get what a nerd I am. And if you're a nerd too, and I guess this is the thing, if you're really into something and passionate about it and you really care, you're going to find your people out there. And passion's the word, isn't it? It's about being passionate. There's another podcaster that I love, a guy called Scroobius Pip. He has this podcast called Distraction Pieces, and he said something along the lines of, it might have been him quoting someone else actually, but along the lines of, it would kind of be, it would be stupid to believe that there's not somebody out there that would like your stuff. If you're putting stuff out there, it's kind of the backwards way of thinking about it. But, it's like, you know what, if you like it, there's got to be some people out there somewhere that like it, And yeah. It's funny. There's this musician that I came across on Instagram, and he's into other things too. And he's so geeky about, I won't name names, but he's so nerdy and geeky about the things that he's into that I find him fascinating, because I'm not necessarily into I'm talking about other stuff besides music, I can't even remember now in watching the videos, but it's things like, action figures and things stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I've got this one from this show and this one from, and he's into all this stuff. And it's just and you watch him, he's so into it that you can't not find it endearing, It's and so if you're really into whatever you're into, it's one of the things I love about Japan, traveling there and working, because the people there, whatever you're into, if it's food, if it's fashion, if it's music, they do not screw around. They go into it 300%. So they're so passionate about cars or whatever they're into, rockabilly culture or whatever that, and there's all these super passionate little groups of people that are fans of things in Japan, things that they're really passionate about. I'll never forget going to it was the Harajuku actually train station, where the subway and the train stop is there, right by Harajuku, where all the famous sort of shopping and all that is, and And there was this group of people sitting there on the ground in the train station, and they had a boombox. This is the first time I was in Japan, 95, I think. Mm-hmm. And they were sitting around in a like 10, 12 people sitting there, and they had books of photographs and this boombox, and they're listening to music, and they got T-shirts on, and it's all like this artist, like some musical artist that they were super into. And I asked my friend that knew a lot more about Japan. It was, he was, a friend that I was there with. What are these people doing? Like, I'd never seen anything like that. Like, they're just fans of this guy, and they get together here and they meet like every Saturday or whatever, and this is what they do. They get together and they meet and they just listen to his music and kind of like worshiping this music artist, And it was like the Beatles or something, like that kind of passion. So I love that about Japan. But anyway, I digress a little bit. But the whole point is, whatever you're into, if you're really passionate about it and you make some great content and put it out there, you're going to find your people. And they're going to be all over the world because you can hit them now with YouTube. And they're going to be in, Mumbai, and they're going to be in Thailand, and they're going to be in Detroit, and they're going to be all, and you get this, no matter how geeky it is, And that's my world with guitar pedals, and my thing is I've got my people that like what I do. So
sure.
And I always tell people because I do a clinic on this. This is kind of like the big takeaway from my. It's a clinic where I basically, I go all last year was going around to these music stores and recording a song in the clinic. I kind of base it around my gear that I use, my Shure amplifier and guitar and a couple of specific things. But I bring a little recording interface and stuff, and I just request when I get there that there's a little PA set up and stuff. And I sort of simulate my home studio in the clinic, and I actually record the song in the clinic. So the bass and drums are already done, but I talk a little bit about how I program the drums and stuff, and about how I cut the bass. And then I track all the guitars in the clinic, do a little rough mix, and then spit it out, basically into a mix. And so that's what I do. Like, I showed you guys my process right now. And then I just say, so like, this is why all you guys came to see me at the clinic. These little things that I do with very minimal equipment, you can see what I'm doing. And I say, there's no reason why you can't do this, be it, what in your own style of music or whatever you want to do, and make a YouTube video and then put it out, and you might find yourself halfway around the world in Thailand or whatever, giving a clinic on how you do what you do, because that's what's happened. Is it's brought me, I don't know, this level of like, I guess, notoriety or whatever for just doing something that I'm really passionate about, sitting in my home studio. And I tell people, like, don't limit this to, for instance, cooking. That's a great one. Like, if you're a good cook, don't think that, like, I'm an idiot. I need lessons. There's guys like me that need to know. So if you're a good cook, even just at basics, if you think like, wow, there's no great videos on how to make, how to pan fry fish or whatever, something simple, like that's a great idea for, YouTube channels is great, simple cooking channels. Or if you're really into whatever it is you're into, don't limit it. Like, if you've got your nerdy, geeky thing that you're super passionate about, you can probably, find your people out there on YouTube. And then, of course, you asked me about making a living doing this stuff. That comes kind of, it's weird. It just sort of happens. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like there's different ways to monetize these things. But you quickly sort of start to figure them out. If things are going well, and if you're getting views on videos or whatever it is that you're doing, those things just sort of start to come to you.
Sure. You just kind of lean into that, I guess. I guess the thing with you as well is that you always use original music. You create little songs for your videos and stuff, so you're not using copyrighted material. So then
that's true.
You get to retain the rights from that. And also, I remember you telling me that it's kind of funny that, as a musician, people enjoy having gear. It's a thing, especially guitarists. They like getting new pedals and amps and stuff and new guitars. For you,
toys.
You get sent that stuff. That's great, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because you get sent that new thing, and if you've got to do a video on it, that's 2 days work, whatever. So yes, you get paid, and yes, you get the gear, but you look at it sat there in the box, you think, that's 2.5 days editing or whatever,
Yeah, you look, if they start piling up the boxes and you realize like, okay, that's 2 days of life, that's 2 days of my life, I better get on it,
Sure.
and kind of,
has there been anything
but
that
it's a quality problem, that's for sure. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding? It's like I get to like go to work and just play with toys. This is the thing. With my YouTube channel, one thing I will say that's really been fun about it is that I love nothing more than just sitting and writing and coming up with music. And it's like painting to me. It's like throwing paint at the wall and seeing what's cool, And so my whole thing I always say is like, yes, it's a pedal demo, but I plug in the piece of guitar equipment, I get the sound out of it, and then I see what comes out that inspires me to write a riff or something, and then I just start programming drums and I go from there. And really all I'm doing is writing music.
Sure.
So I don't, and then I just I happen to turn the camera on when I'm ready to get a take and film it. And so, but the whole process, I'm not thinking about making the best. That's why sometimes my lighting sucks, or why it's really all about writing a good piece of music that shows off the audio, so people can hear what the gear does. And I like people to feel like a bit of a fly on the wall, not like it's a commercial, like a full video production. I don't even really worry about that stuff. I just kind of turn the camera on, and as long as the lights are pretty good and stuff, I turn the camera on and forget they're on, and then I just track and come up with the parts, and then I edit it together into the video, and it's really kind of so anyway, my point being that I'm really having a good time like doing this stuff. It doesn't feel I'm working, but it doesn't feel like work. It's what I would like to be doing anyway. So if find the thing you love and then do that, and you'll never work a day in your life, sort of thing. Is
absolutely. And well, really let's move on then and talk about the Classic Rock Show if we can, because obviously, as we were sort of saying, YouTube is kind of your bread and butter, I suppose. Now it's kind of your day job, but you kind of don't have to go out and do gigs, I suppose, unless you want to. So why was the Classic Rock Show an attractive gig, and how did it come about?
Well, it seemed like a lot of fun to get out and just play all that great music. Okay, so I always say with gigs that you got the music, the money, and the hang. With any road gig.
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity of like whether or not you should be doing a gig. So if the music's good, if you've got any two of those things, you've got a good gig. If you've got all three, it's a great gig, but only one is not enough. So if the money's great, but the music sucks and you don't like the people, you're going to be miserable, If the music's great, but you're starving because you're not making any dough and the people are jerks, that's going to suck. But if the people are great and the music's great, but it doesn't pay very well, you're still going to have a great time,
Absolutely.
So if you can get paid and go on the road and make music and play some great songs and have fun, and we sure had fun, there's no doubt it's a great group of people. It's super easygoing. I mean,
absolutely.
So easygoing. It's like, right, just a good time playing fun. It's like a celebration of great music. So.
Sure.
And that's what I hoped it would be, and indeed it was. It turned out to be really fun. You're right. I don't really have to go anymore, but I want to. I still want to go play because that's kind of part of my YouTube persona. Actually, is and it's my real persona. But I mean, I feel like to some degree I didn't start out just doing YouTube. I've been touring and doing records and stuff since the 90s.
Of course,
so YouTube came later, so I like to keep that. And it feeds into it. Like you make the YouTube videos, and you do. If I just sit here in this one room and make it, that gets pretty stagnant. But if I go out on the road and I make my vlogs while we're traveling around, it's like, okay, today we're in Newcastle and let's check out this town, and then here's sound check, and we got this. That's part of my YouTube thing, I feel like. So it's good to get out there and play still.
I don't know if you felt like this, but for me, one of the reasons I love doing the Classic Rock Show is that because we're doing all these, it's essentially a cover band. That's what it is. But there's a lot of amazing talent in the band. You've got like Henry and Wayne on the bass, and these incredible musicians. But it kind of doesn't really matter because whoever you're covering, we're never going to be Led Zeppelin or The Who or AC/DC. Like I say that on stage most nights. So it kind of it removes the ego from the band a little bit, which I like, because you can't stand up there and think you're the bee's knees when you're singing a Robert Plant song, because you're not as cool as Robert Plant and you never will be, and that's
but you'll be as cool as you.
Exactly, and that's kind of why I like it,
Yeah, you're you, and that's what I love about it. And it's funny because if people ever criticize, like you'll read some of the YouTube comments or something, it's like they do realize that we're just having fun playing covers, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't think that we're, we're just having a great time celebrating this music, and it's just supposed to be a hell of a lot of fun, and it is. But it's like, so I always try and remind myself of that, and hope that other people remind themselves of that. This is the music we all grew up with, and we're just having some fun playing it. So that's
exactly.
all. We're not taking ourselves too seriously, I don't think. It's a great production. I mean, the lighting and it's done on a really high level, the sound and the lighting. And
I thought you hated the lighting because you can never see anything.
I hate the cans in the front of the stage that are pointed right at my face. I've only got one good eye, really, and then you shine a good light in it. Like, it's just blinding me, and I play a wrong note, and then I get pissed off.
That always made me laugh.
A couple of the shows, I just kicked them out of the way.
The fucking lights, man. It's like, oh, Pete's off again.
Yeah, Pete probably wasn't very happy with me.
So how did it all start out, man? When did you pick up your guitar in the first place? How old were you when you first started playing?
10, I think.
10,
About 10. I actually started on violin a year or so before because I was just like into like fiddle music for it. I think I heard like Charlie Daniels Band or something. Devil came down from Georgia looking for a soul to steal. And so I saw somebody playing fiddle, I assume probably on, because that's what I don't actually remember that, but I remember liking the Charlie Daniels Band, and I remember the sound of fiddle and Irish jigs and stuff. It's pre me discovering rock music, really. So I played violin for a little bit, and I liked that, but then pretty much discovered The Who not too long after that, and then was like, oh, all bets are off now. I got to get one of these electric guitars, and a friend of mine taught me how to play I Can't Explain on the guitar by The Who. Yeah. And I was a really big Beatles fan at that point, too, because this same friend had turned me on to, he was playing all kinds of cool music for me. He's a couple of years older than me, a friend in the neighborhood that kind of took me under his wing, taught me all about music, showed me all these great bands, and here, you got to listen to this, listen to that, and I just got obsessed with guitar. So that would be, it was probably like 80, 81, something like that.
And you're from Edmonton in Canada, right? Is that
right.
Where you grew up? Yeah. What's it like out there? What was it like growing up there? Is it like as you imagine, like covered in snow and all that stuff?
Certainly like? For about 6 months of the year, it's a cold place, but it's a pretty big city. Really kind of it's, places change, but back then I remember it being pretty sort of like working class, kind of blue collar, lots of farming going on around there, and lots of the big industry where I'm from was kind of oil and gas wells, so it was like so kind of like the Texas of Canada, really, Alberta. So
not particularly creative then.
No, I wouldn't. No. Although I managed to find those people. That was the neat thing. Was I found some cool instructors and some people that were like good guitar. There was a cool rock scene going on in Edmonton. There was a cool like a punk rock scene. There was these bands like SNFU and I think like DOA and these kind of punk bands that came from Canada, from Western Canada. So there was that, and then there was the whole like obviously like the big ones that you think of like Rush and bands like that. So that was going on, and there was a lot of rock clubs in Edmonton and places to go out and see. But it was mostly covers. You'd go see bands there and play covers, and that was something that. It's funny because now coming full circle, the Classic Rock Show, and also just kind of my whole career as a sideman. My first experience is seeing a lot of bands in clubs when I was 13, 14, 15 years old and sneaking in because I was underage, was bands playing covers on a really high level. Really knowing the notes and knowing the phrasing and learning the stuff and getting the right tones and all. And that always stuck with me. And it sort of served me well once I started getting sideman gigs, and I'd grown up with a real like appreciation for bands that played other people's music really well.
Absolutely.
And then thank God I also got a good healthy dose of like writing and stuff like that as well, and doing my own thing. So, but it was both things because I feel like the cover band thing, really, in the whole Western Canadian cover band circuit, which was a big. What would happen back then is a band would roll into Edmonton, into one of these rock clubs, which is generally connected to like a motor hotel. So imagine like a big rock club connected to a hotel, and they'd set up on a Sunday. There'd be no gig on Sunday. They'd set up on Sunday, and then Monday through Saturday would be, the nights that the band would play. So there'd be the same band there all week, and they would carry usually lights and PA and have like a full like production, like pretty good, like usually 2 or 3 man crew. And they would be like a Who cover band, or there was an Alice Cooper guy that like did a whole Alice Cooper tribute, and he had the snake and the costumes. Like he literally had a boa constrictor that he would carry on. Yeah, and I remember that dude traveled around in like I think a limousine or something. That was so wacky. But he considered he was like a rock star. Like he'd show up, but he's an Alice Cooper. You know, it was funny, man. But like a tribute. But so there was a lot of bands like that, and I kind of grew up watching those bands. You know, playing this music, but on a pretty high level. And then a lot of concerts coming through too. So I saw everybody in the 80s. I mean, I would wait out, you know, in line for tickets all night long to get, you know, a fifth row floor seat or something to go see Iron Maiden, or, you know, I saw, you know, Genesis on the Mama tour, and, you know, I saw Journey on the Escape tour, and I saw all these bands, you know.
Man, I don't think you can put a price on that stuff, man. I mean, I always feel super lucky growing up in Reading. It sounds kind of similar to, you know, Edmonton in a way, in that it was quite industrial, and there wasn't. I mean, there was a sort of healthy. There, you know, there's probably 5 or 6 venues in Reading that were kind of pretty good for rock, but we had Reading Festival, you know. So
of course,
from the age of sort of 16, 17, I was going there, and I saw, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of bands at that festival. You know, from Guns N' Roses to Pulp to Muse to Foo Fighters, you know, you name it, they all came through there over the years.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a young musician, it was obviously super inspiring, but, you know, you learn so much by watching those guys on stage, don't you? You know, you learn about stagecraft and being a performer, and, you know, and, you know, and obviously now you can chuck it into YouTube and see Led Zeppelin or the Beatles or whatever, but there's nothing like being there and seeing, like, you know, the intensity of these people, you know. And
well, it was amazing, right? Because it's like when you're a kid, I don't know about, so you're younger than I am, but it's like we didn't have, I mean, literally, I don't even think when I first started going to shows that there was MTV yet. It might have been because that was 81 or 82 or something, wasn't it? So it was like the first couple shows I would have seen. I mean, I remember seeing Rod Stewart and like the Doobie Brothers on what was supposed to be their final tour, which is funny because they're still a band now out playing. So when I think about how long ago that was, I mean, good on them. They're still out doing it. But, you know, and so anyway, you'd go see these people, and you're like, in a town like Edmonton, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're here in my town. And you'd never seen, you know, like maybe you'd seen them on TV or in a magazine, but that was it. And so the excitement of that was so cool. Anyways, I just remember going to the show and the anticipation, you know, before the gig, and the, you know, even just walking in through the parking lot at the beginning was exciting, with the people selling the bootleg T-shirts and stuff. And then you get inside and everybody's buying the new shirt at the merch stand. And then you go sit down and it's like they're playing cool tunes. It was a party, you know, and then the lights would go down. And, you know, the whole place would start to smell like weed, you know, and everyone, the crowd would go crazy. And then you could see them walking as shadows out on the stage, like, oh my God, they're really here.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so exciting. It was just like intoxicating, you know, so much fun. But, and I have to say, like, my sister was really into British hard rock and heavy metal, and she used to get Kerrang! Magazine from like the local record store in Edmonton, like a local kind of really cool indie kind of record store. And so I knew all about Reading and the Reading Festival and Donington, and these, it seems so exotic, all these English rock festivals, you know, Castle Donington, and so I loved that, you know. And,
well, man, Canada's exotic to us, trust me. So you went to music school in LA, is that right? So you moved down?
Yeah, when I was 19, I moved to LA and went to GIT, to MI.
Yeah, and how did you find studying? Because I've had this conversation with lots of my friends, and some of them loved music school, and some of them kind of hated it. So where do you sit on that spectrum?
Well, MI was such a, I mean, it really was a vocational music school in so many ways. It wasn't like a, you know what I mean? Like it was, I don't know how to describe it. It was pretty easy to pass the curriculum and get through school. It wasn't like going to, I don't think it's anything like going to Berkeley or something, at least not at the time. That was my... You know, but what I did learn, so like I can't play jazz, for instance, and I went to MI and graduated, you know.
Right.
But I learned a lot at MI about, and I'm not saying that there aren't players that come out, there is that come out of MI that are great jazz players. What I learned is it's all there for you. They just don't, you're not going to be spoon-fed it and just come out a great player on the other end. You have to tackle it and you can kind of go to MI and take it for what it is. I mean, there was a great library. There was all these great kind of elective things you could do. And some of the stuff I got out of MI that was the most valuable was like real world stuff. Like they used to do these live performance workshops where it would kind of simulate a jam in a club where, you know, you'd go into a room, there'd be drums and bass and guitar set up and a PA, and they'd call your name and you'd get up on stage and they would have told you the song you were going to play that week. It'd be Led Zeppelin. Like I remember doing Black Dog once by Zeppelin.
Not an easy jam song either, really.
Dude, not an easy jam song. And I learned the hard way, getting up and playing with it. You know how in the recording the hi-hat actually keeps going, but they just muted it, and you hear the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right?
Sure.
So, you know, he was keeping time through there. Well, the drummer's kind of got to keep time through the vocal breaks or you're screwed, right? Well, the drummer didn't do that. So we got up and just destroyed it. I mean, it was awful. It was a train wreck. And I always remember the guy who was kind of running the live performance workshop that day, a great bass player named Steve Bailey. He walked up. I mean, I don't think we got halfway through the tune. He got up and grabbed the vocal mic and said, "Well, the Led Zeppelin police are waiting outside to take you guys away." But he would talk about what we did wrong, and you would learn. You know, it was very similar to getting up in a club and so I learned a lot of that kind of stuff at MI. It was like real world. Okay, like next time I get up and do Black Dog, I'm going to know what to do. I'm not going to, fall on my face again. So it was a lot of great info like that, real world kind of stuff. I remember playing with like in the big live. There's a big live performance hall there, the P100 room, and I remember playing with like Tim Bogert, who was a bass player with Beck Bogert and Apsey, and here I am on stage with this guy, and I'm like 19, and he's holding up the chord changes, 2 chord, 5 chord, because I didn't know the song we were playing, and I'm just watching it. I'm like, I know how to do this. I get this. And that guy used to play with Jeff Beck in the 60s. And I'm up on stage with him, and he's showing me, and I'm getting it. And it was like so thrilling, So, and he also taught me a great thing that I'll relate. Like it was stuff like this. These are the things that I take away from MI. He did a singing class. He was a pretty good singer, real solid rock singer. And I was kind of shy and timid always with singing. And I remember going in there, sitting there, and he'd go, okay, maybe he showed us some simple like singing exercise, and I probably did it and sucked or whatever. And he'd go, okay, let's start from the beginning. He'd go, okay, your mom is across the parking lot. You're at the mall, and you want to get her attention, right?
Yeah.
Okay, call your mom. She's all the way across the parking lot. How do you get her attention? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? And he's like, just call your mother across the parking lot. How do you do it? And I went like, mom, like that, something like, And he goes, she's across the parking lot. Mom! He goes, that's how you sing,
Exactly.
And I was like, oh,
Man,
okay.
I have to do that with almost every student I ever vocal coach.
Really?
Because, what? I guess, again, we digress, but a lot of singing stuff is unlearning bad habits that we've picked up as we've become adults, Because, there's a classic thing of you never hear a baby lose its voice. It can scream all day long and it's fine. You never hear croaky babies. And it's because they're screaming the right way, And as we get older, we're told to shut up and be quiet a lot. And we kind of, all our inhibitions come into play, and suddenly we're all constricted and tight. We don't want to be loud, or we don't want to, we're embarrassed to be loud and out there, And a lot of it for people, especially at the beginning of learning singing, is learning exactly what you're just saying, learning to let go and just do what you would naturally do. If somebody was about to walk out into the street, you go, hey!
I like it. Yeah, exactly.
There's a car coming, you wouldn't go, hey.
Right. With some conviction, your natural instincts, what to do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
So I don't want to go through like blow by blow, and then you did this and then you did this, but I want to touch upon something you mentioned earlier that I thought was interesting, because you said you've obviously worked as a sideman for a lot of big names and big acts, and we will obviously talk about a few of them. But you've also been an artist and done your own stuff, been in bands, done your own writing and stuff. What would you say the main differences are between those two? So being an artist and working for an artist, and what are the pros and cons of both of those?
Pros and cons. Well, I feel like things have changed a little bit, because when I started growing up in this business, it was kind of like, if you really wanted to get anywhere, I mean, this is a little bit of an excuse because I'm realizing I'm contradicting things I've realized recently about folks like Steve Vai that put on an independent record when he in like 1982 and was very successful with it. But when I always thought, okay, if you're going to be in your own band, do your own thing, you kind of need a record deal and you need a team of people and a lawyer and a manager, and that's the way to kind of make it work, you know. Like I say, there's examples that I've got in my own life where it's like, wow, that really wasn't the case. But that's always what I thought, you know, was like, if you're going to be an artist, you've got to kind of go and have this whole team of people. And it's kind of it can be a harder path or a more difficult path because you got to, you're writing music, producing it, and like figuring out a cool band name, how do we do merch? How do you do this? How do you do that? To be honest, like the sidemen thing, all you kind of really need to do is like learn your instrument really well and practice, get like a real high level of competency and then have some good people skills. So for me, it was like in the beginning, it was like I really wanted to, my first thing that got me into being a professional musician was, writing, recording like 50 tunes with a band, finally getting a record deal, getting an advance and going that route. But it faltered after about a year. It was like the record didn't really do anything. And then it was like, okay, on to the next. What do I do now? And I started going back and forth between, my own music projects where I was a part of it and writing and stuff, and then getting into the sideman world. And there's only so long, I think, that you can go get in the van, starve, and drive around the country or whatever, trying to break a band, that you're, you know what I mean? Like you get into your 30s and maybe into your 40s, and it gets to the point where it's like, it's a little like watching that movie about Anvil. You ever see that, the heavy metal band, the Anvil movie? If nobody's seen it, it's amazing. It's like this great, rockumentary about their whole, like they will not give up. And they're like, these dudes are getting into their 50s and stuff. And they're like, it's going to happen, And they were always at the cusp of like heavy metal, like kind of in the 80s, sort of like breaking. And, they've had a lot of ups and downs. And so really, it's kind of heartbreaking and heartwarming story all at the same time. But it's great. But I feel like a lot of people have a limited amount of patience for that stuff. Like they will hit the point where it's like, I need some more security. I want to get married. I want to have a kid. Like, so there's a lot of my friends that have drifted into the kind of working either, in studios or sideman kind of stuff, doing that. It's a way that you can go on tour, play great music, have a career playing music. If you rise to the top, the cream of the crop of that, and it's a lot easier than breaking a band. Having said all that, obviously, if you're in Muse or something, you're like, this is where it's at, man. We're writing our own music. We're living by our own rules. And, the funny thing is, though, I think that there's this misconception like, oh, it's the greatest thing in the world to be in your own band and write your own songs and stuff. But usually in bands, there's some sort of power structure. And a lot of this is when we hear about the headbutting in bands and stuff, and the problems, and the bands will split up, and there'll be lawsuits and all this kind of stuff. Many times in a band, it can get into that stuff. Maybe where there's like difficulty with the just personnel problems or whatever. Or, I write all the songs. Why are you taking half the songwriting, or that kind of thing? Where it's like these kinds of arguments. When you're a sideman, it's kind of cut and dry. It's like, here's the deal. The gig pays this much. Here's the length of time that it lasts for. We'll revisit after that if we're going to do more touring or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like a little bit more like you're an independent contractor doing a job. It's like being a roofer or a plumber, or except a hell of a lot more fun maybe in many ways. But, not to take away from
the difference being, like, you're totally right. You are, obviously, I've done similar gigs, like that, where I've been in bands, and, it's this tour and it's this amount of money, and, and there's very much that hierarchy like you're talking about. But then the plumbers and the builders, they're not backstage drinking champagne with Paul McCartney in the next dressing room, and that's where it gets difficult, because I'm sure you've had so many amazing experiences and continue to do so in your career, where you must have been like, shit, I'm on a private jet and I'm here and I'm doing this, and I was just going to say, I read on your website today you played the biggest ever concert staged in Japan, for example.
Yeah.
Was that?
Oh God, dude,
I'm going to probably pronounce his name wrong. I'm really sorry, but is it Tsuyoshi Nagabuchi? Is that how you pronounce it? That's pretty
close. Tsuyoshi Nagabuchi.
Yeah. And something like 100,000 people, right? I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, the state. So he's a really amazing artist, and this is one of the fun things about doing sideman gigs is that there's a whole world out there, and there's artists in Italy and in France and in Japan that maybe you're not even aware of if you're from the UK or if you're from the States or Canada, that are massive and have been big stars for maybe 20, 30, 40 years, and going to do those gigs is something that I got into around 2014, playing with some folks other than U.S.-based artists, and so Tsuyoshi's one of these people that he has had hits since like the 70s, songs that he's a fascinating guy. He kind of almost like a folk artist, traveling around with an acoustic guitar, playing shows all by himself all over Japan in like the early 70s, early mid 70s, and then he kind of went way more rock and developed kind of almost like a hard rock sound, but always had this kind of that other side to him too. And he's basically like one of the I would say top 3 or 4 rock artists in Japan. Going people say he's like the Bruce Springsteen of Japan or something, like there's that kind of and going there and working with him is just a fascinating experience, because all of a sudden now you're working for a Japanese company essentially, and so you get that cultural perspective of it's different than going there and playing with an American band and touring with an American crew, and where you get a little taste of going there, but it's not the same as when you're working for an organization that's based there. When I first got over there was 3 of us from the States. 2 of the guys now, John Button and Lauren Gold, tour with The Who as well, keys and bass. So they play with The Who. So mainly because of that, really long story short, at some points I was the only American guy over there playing in the band. Because of that, sometimes I'd be the only American guy in the room with 30 or 40 Japanese folks, and that is an amazing experience, working in a band where nobody's speaking English all of a sudden, and you just sink or swim kind of, but music's a universal language, so you make it work and you learn it. God, I loved it. I mean, because their work ethic is so crazy over there and awesome, sometimes over the top, but it's like really a great experience to throw yourself into. And he, with the big show you mentioned, that was like a career capping concert where he wanted to do something that was so over the top. He'd done a show in the south of Japan. He's from a place called Kagoshima, and there's a great big volcano down there that's an active volcano that still spits out ash almost every day in the morning, and it's unbelievable. But he did a show there at the volcano for 70,000 people, and that was 10 or 15 years ago or something now, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it might have been 2007 or something. And he wanted to top that. He's like, what can I do because he's always trying to kind of go one more. So he thought, Fuji, let's do a show at Fuji for,
as you do.
And let's get 100,000 people. Yeah. So he literally went as far as securing a site that was it was like the Tokyo, Fuji's pretty far from Tokyo, but it was called the Tokyo University Farm or something like that. So it was like a great big open, beautiful site where it was just like in the middle of this big open space, but all surrounded by mountains, and then with Fuji in the background. And he had to go and literally relocate this site for these people. This is where I want to do it. Well, this is a farm, sir. We can't do that here. Yeah. We've got animals here. And he had to figure out how to make that work, literally safely relocate, the farm essentially for the time being, so that he could use this. So he paid for all that. And, he's this guy that has these grand dreams of doing things and actually makes it happen.
Wow.
So the stage that they built is, it was 200 meters wide. The biggest stage that they'd ever built in Japan, with this huge structure. It was kind of built to mirror the mountain, with these great big video screens and stuff. It was unbelievable. So that experience, I went there. I mean, it was literally a year building up to that show of prep. And then we got there 2 or 3 months before the show, and we did 52 days of rehearsal for one show.
Right.
So we played all night.
He works hard as well.
Yeah. That's the other thing we haven't mentioned. Is it was he's a hard worker, but the thing that we didn't mention, it was an all night concert. So we played from 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. until about 6 a.m. with little breaks. So it was a lot of songs. So I think we tackled about 75 tunes or something like that, and whittled it down to whatever would fit in 4 sets, of music.
Wow.
So experiences like that, you're not going to get that. Like, if you're in a band, I remember seeing the guys in the Foo Fighters while I was there getting ready to rehearse for that. They were in the lobby, and I know some of those guys. So I remember seeing Taylor and Pat in the lobby of my hotel that I was staying in Roppongi. They were in town for Summer Sonic, I think, doing a big festival in Japan. And I was talking to Taylor actually for a minute, and I remember saying so trying to explain this situation to him, saying, yeah, I love it because of this and that, and I get to be in it. And he was looking at me like it was like, that is so alien. Like, they tour around with there's probably 50 or 75 or 100, however many people tour with the Foo Fighters, and it's like a very self-contained kind of, their crew, a bunch of American guys, they're all together. They stay in the, they were staying at the, Grand Hyatt Roppongi, and it's awesome because they're on a grand scale. They're the Foo Fighters, one of the biggest rock bands in the world. But it's a different experience than flying to Japan and playing with a Japanese artist that almost sings all in Japanese,
Of course.
and doing this completely different. So it's like the different worlds. And I kind of love that. I would love, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be in the Foo Fighters, but I love the experience of going to get to play with some of these folks too, and getting some of the, let's go see what this is going to be like,
Yeah.
And that's been fascinating for me every time. You have to be adaptable and open to new experiences. And the more, it's not for everybody, Well,
I'm really glad we got to have that chat actually, because, that's one of the things I love about podcasting actually, is that you get to talk about these things that maybe aren't so easy to explain in a 30-second clip, and it's pretty cool, man. I do want to mention Chris Cornell as well, because he's obviously one of my heroes, and so I mean, what was he like to work for? How did you get the gig? Was it an audition? How did you end up working with him?
Well, it was an audition. I'd heard that he was possibly going to be going out on the road and had a new record coming out, and that he was, and so I'd heard kind of through the grapevine that it was maybe going to happen. I was like, oh man, that's a big one. But I just kind of put it in the back of my mind, and I waited. I wasn't really actively, you don't want to think about these things too much, hope too much, that it's going to happen. Then all of a sudden, a month or two goes by, and I got an email one night. I was working with Courtney Love in the studio actually, and it was about 12:30 at night, and email said, if you want to audition for Chris Cornell, be at such and such an address tomorrow at noon, and here's the 5 songs,
right?
Including 2 that I'd never heard because they were new songs off his new record that hadn't been released yet. So you download the MP3s, and I was like, that's in 11 and a half hours. I got to, I'm still working right now. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So I split, got home probably about 1 a.m. and I just set up my guitar amp and rig and started, making some presets for, I did the whammy preset for Like a Stone and the tremolo, and did the, it was Spoon Man, Like a Stone, Cochise, and 2 songs. A couple Audioslave songs, a Soundgarden song, and 2 of his solo songs. So I got a few tunes, probably sort of learned that night, went to sleep for 3 hours, set my alarm, got up, kept working for another 3 hours. I got up at 7:30 or something, worked till 10:30, and then it was time to go, pretty much had to break down my gear. And so I drove over there, and I got there, and in the parking lot was, a who's who of all the cool guitar players in LA. And I was like, oh, I should probably just turn around and go home. That's what I thought. You get that like, oh, that guy's here and that guy's here. God. So I don't even want to get out of the car, 'cause like,
they were thinking the same thing, bro, when they saw you walking in.
Well, I think we all, like have the, but the interesting thing was, I think everybody was in the same boat. Like not everybody had the, it was a real quickly organized audition, and it was for everybody, bass, drums, everything. So it was a full band. So I went in and played, and I got a call back to go back the next day.
Was he there? Was he there watching? Did he sing with you, or did he just watch you guys?
First day he sang.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty cool, man.
It was really cool. I remember I was kind of stage right, sort of, from him, and I remember playing Cochise and playing Like a Stone, and and going, wow, and playing Spoon Man with him. It was like, the very first day, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And
was he always just amazing? Like, did he ever have vocal issues and stuff? I know I'm moving forward a bit, but I'm just so interested as a singer, because he's right up there for me, probably in the top 5 rock vocalists of all time. Like, was he always just on it?
He had vocal issues like anybody, man. Like, you know, if he was a little sick or feeling under the weather. I mean, he had to cancel a couple shows once, I remember. I remember in particular, like in Arizona, maybe it was like, was it Arizona or San Antonio or something? I remember like a show like, oh, it's not going to happen tonight, you know, but he'd always try, man. He really like, he wasn't like a, you know, he could be relatively sick and still go out and do it. He wouldn't, you know, he had to be really ill to not do it. But occasionally, you know, all that crazy music, he'd sort of, wasn't easy to sing. So in a way, I suppose
absolutely.
You know, as a young man, he probably painted himself into a corner a little bit with some of the tunes, you know, like a lot of people do, right? Like, you know, sing real high but
man, that's always been my issue, because I get, you know, now people know I can do AC/DC and whatever. I always get those gigs. You know, I never get phone calls going, hey Jesse, you want to do this Bee Gees tribute? Like, it just doesn't happen. So
I know.
Yeah, occupational hazard. Anyway, sorry, man. Continue.
Well, so I got a call back, and I went back the next day, and I played that day, and then I didn't hear anything for a few days. I got a third call back, and then I went down that third day. And the one thing I always say is when it had gotten whittled down to where it was like, I think this is going to happen. Like, I think I'm going to get this gig. But I knew he was looking at a few different guitar players. And the other guitar player that was, because he wanted two in the band. So there was another guy named Yogi who ended up getting the gig as well as me. But I remember calling Yogi the night before the third, you know, audition and saying, hey man, do you want to go over all the parts on the phone? Like, why don't let's work together on this and split up all these parts and talk it through so we can go in there organized, and then we'll kind of have each other's back, like teamwork, you know, not be like, because guitar players can be kind of, you know, like, and he's like, yeah, man, it's cool. And so we went through it and split it all up on the phone, all the parts. And so when we played the songs, because by that point we were into the third audition and he'd added a couple tunes. I think we were up to about 9 songs. It was like a fair amount. It was like almost like a set, you know? And I was like, the more organized we can be, it'll just make it sound better and we'll go in there with confidence. And so, you know, we played a few tunes and it was like he'd you know, play rhythm and I'd step up and play the solo because we'd talked about that. And then in the next tune, I'd lay back and he'd step up and play the solo. And it was like very like, and I remember Chris, you know, very organized, and Chris saying like, it's like these guys have already rehearsed together, you know? And he said that and I was like, yes, you know?
Yes.
And that was the day we got the gig. We got offered the gig about 5 p.m. that day, right after that. And then it was like, so that was magic. And I was so happy. And then I remember going home and getting an email from the manager, working on, you know, business a little bit, like talking about salary and stuff, but then like also like, okay, what's going to happen is we're going to do 5 days a week and then go on tour. The tour starts in 3 weeks, and we're going to send you 3 songs a day to learn. And so you'll rehearse from like 10 or 11, whatever it was in the morning, till like 6. And then you go home and you'll get 3 new songs in your email that night, learn those, then come back the next day at 10 or 11 and we start again. Great. And so every night in my email would be Hunger Strike and, you know, Doesn't Remind Me, and like some, you know, Rusty Cage would show up, you know, and you're like, oh my God, I get to play this song tomorrow with that guy.
Yeah,
you know?
man.
And it was magic. Yeah. And then we did, so it was like 3 weeks of that, like going to school. By the time we hit the road, I remember we went to Vegas, was the first show. We played with the Army of Anyone, which was the singer from the band Filter, and he had joined with the guys from STP, the DeLeo brothers, and Ray Luzier on drums, and they had this band called Army of Anyone. Really cool record they made, actually. But I remember we kind of opened for them on Fremont Street in Vegas. Great big like outside gig, and I was like, this is the shit, man. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm playing with Chris Cornell with all, and it just kind of went from there. We hit the road after that, and I was basically on the road the rest of the year from April through December, and we went to Europe twice and went to South America and just, you know, around the States a couple of times, and it was unbelievable. And, you know, so that was 2007, and I remember, like you said, oh yeah, like you find yourself in all these situations all of a sudden. I remember, I mean, that was April, and by June, I remember playing Hyde Park, that Hard Rock Calling, and Aerosmith was the headliner. We were direct support for Aerosmith.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember it was my birthday, June 24th, 2007. You can find video of it on YouTube of that gig. And I remember Chris saying like, hey, I was tuning my guitar. I'm playing in front of 60,000 people, you know, in Hyde Park, tuning my guitar. And I remember Chris saying, hey, it's somebody's birthday here today. We're all going to sing him a happy birthday. And they started singing. And I realized it was me that they were, you know, and I was like, oh my God, like, it's so cool, that he would think of that, because he was that kind of guy. He would, and Brian May standing on the side of the stage watching, and, Steven Tyler and everything backstage afterwards, and then Aerosmith coming up and watching Aerosmith from the side of the stage after that. And that was life. It was like getting all of a sudden just a first class ticket into rock and roll. Like, everybody loved him so much, man. Jimmy Page would come out to the, the Astoria, or is that the place? Astoria Ballroom? Was that the place?
Yeah.
Remember Jimmy Page coming to that gig? Is that the name of it?
There's the Electric Ballroom. I think the Astoria's gone now. That was another venue, but
yeah, I think that was the place where we played. And I came upstairs, and Paige was standing there in the dressing room with Ross Halfin. It was like, oh, hello.
Yeah,
and then
there are those moments, man. Like nobody can take that away from you. That's yours. And I always say, obviously, how much of a Beatles fan I am, and the one for me was I played this festival in Belgium with Gutter Damring, the movie thing. I'm sure I've told you about before, and we played. I think we must have been playing to about 18,000 or something like that. It was a big gig for me. It was like, we played like the second stage, but it's this huge indoor kind of arena tent thing. And then Liam Gallagher was on after us. And then it was McCartney headlining that night on the stage. And I remember being in the VIP area, having just done that gig, wearing this like long leather coat, like literally like floor length leather coat, because it was quite a heavy metal thing. Just drinking red wine in this VIP area, watching McCartney play Blackbird, and just being like, I think this is it, man. I think this is it. I think I've made it. And then, obviously it all goes downhill from there. But
you get a taste, though.
They're just magic moments, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you hang in there, they come again. Yeah, that's what I've found. Or maybe Maybe it all stops at some point. I don't know, but hopefully not. It's like, no. Hopefully we keep it going for a while longer, right? You're young, man.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you got your
like I said to you, I'm waiting for. I say this kind of half joking, like I'm just waiting for like a really famous singer to die, just to get that gig,
It's funny because it's like not even necessarily to die, but it's like I used to look it's the purity of like when I was like 14, I would look at the TV and go, well, someday that guy's going to be older and probably retire, and then I can do that.
Yeah,
like playing guitar in some band, And be like, i'll be there someday, because if he could do it, I can do it. And it was like that naive, direct kind of, you know what I mean? And that really is how I thought back then. I remember I couldn't really listen to music when I was a kid without imagining myself in the band. I would imagine myself on stage playing like a fantasy,
I used to do that at gigs all the time. I'd be at a gig and I'd be convinced that, Steven Tyler's going to ask me up to sing a duet. I'd be convinced. I was like, this is the night. I'd be stood there like waiting for him to go, does anybody sing in the audience? As if that's going to happen. I love it. It never happened, unluckily. But, you see those videos of like the kid in the arena in Greece, and suddenly he's playing keyboards with Coldplay and, all that stuff. And he's amazing. And
So check this out. Britt. So that's my girlfriend that plays drums.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
and
of course.
And she has this great story that she was about 15, and she still is kind of like the world's biggest Green Day fan. And Green Day would do this thing where they would get people up on stage to play sometimes, like kids or just random people in the audience. They'd just pull them out. And they would do it on a certain song. And she was like, I'm going to be that person. And she won tickets or something in a radio thing to go to, she didn't live in Vegas, but it was like she won tickets to go to the show in Vegas. And so they had to like travel there to get, I think, to the gig. Her and her mom, I got tickets to go green. We got to go to Vegas. And her mom's like, okay, because she was cool. And like they, flew there or whatever to go see the show. And she's like, I'm going to be on stage with them. And her mom's like, what? Like,
yeah,
like, what are you talking about? And, but she knew, that they would sometimes get people up. So she made this big sign that said the name of the song and said the key of the song on it. It's in, key of whatever, I want to play, or whatever the sign said on it.
Yeah.
And a big sign that she colored, got the arts and crafts style, and went there and held up this friggin' sign. And they got her up on stage, and there's video of it. You can watch this on YouTube too. It's the songs. I think it's I can't remember the name of this. Jesus of Suburbia, maybe is the song.
Yeah,
I think.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah,
and so he gets her up because he sees, and he's pointing at, and she was like way up on the side, and he saw the sign, and he's like, get down here, you better know how to play it, you know. And her mom's like, oh my God, like it's actually happening. The thing that my 14-year-old daughter or whatever said is going to happen is actually happening, you know.
Well, I'm not spiritual particularly, but there's something to be said about putting things out into the universe, isn't there? You know.
She just made it happen. She manifested that shit, you know, and it's unbelievable. So that is the biggest life lesson on how to get gigs, and do you make it happen like that? You just turn it into what you know, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. And then it's like that your whole life changes. So, and that's a life changer, getting up and actually, you know, the strap was so low and she was short, you know, she was just a little kid when this happened, that she had to sit down and play it on the monitor because the strap was so long on the guitar.
Wow.
It was one of those leather ones you couldn't adjust easy. So she just sat down and played, and he would come over and sing in her face. But she played the whole song like perfectly, you know. And then he made her stage dive at the end. She went and ran off the ego ramp like off the end and jumped into the crowd. So it's like
amazing.
Incredible. Yeah, like total rock story, you know. And then go back up to mom. See, I told you. Yeah.
What an experience, man. That's incredible.
I know, she actually did that thing that was like you know, the fantasy we all have. So, but anyway, where were we? You know,
man, I don't want to keep you all afternoon because I know it's what time is it over where you are? 3:30
it's
now or something?
4:13, so it's getting late.
4:13. Yeah, it's just gone midnight here, so it's I'm actually drinking a Corona, believe it or not, because they're dead cheap over here at the moment. So
I didn't even include it. That is a Corona.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Amazing. They must be. What are they going for? 80 cents.
Exactly. I feel totally sorry for them actually. So yeah, shout out to those guys. Anyway, I just want to talk briefly about a couple more bits if that's cool with you, if you've got time.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got a mutual friend called Holly Henderson, and And I just wanted to bring her up because I know you've worked with her as a producer, and I didn't actually ever think I knew how you two got involved with each other and stuff, because I know her from, the scene over here, and she's a great singer-songwriter and stuff, and I just wondered how you guys got involved. And
it was the power of Instagram. So once again, just the putting things out there, just through her playing things on Instagram and seeing her, and she was really young. She was probably like 19 or something when I saw her on there, and I was like, oh, this girl's got something really cool. And then she started sending me links to her SoundCloud and these little things that she was creating, and I wouldn't call them songs because they were like usually 9-minute crazy opuses of sound, and she didn't really know what she was doing, so they were like technically like not great sounding or engineered or anything, and sometimes be really distorted and things, but it'd be like every now and then, like I'd hear one of the things she does really well is layer vocal harmonies. Yeah. With interesting chords and interesting chord changes. So one chord leading into the next where I'd go, oh my God, that's like Brian Wilson level crazy shit. Like I was just like, that is so beautiful. And I would hit her up and say, that thing that happens at 3 minutes and 45 seconds in, that's amazing. Can you do that again?
That's your song.
That's your song. So we started having these back and forths, and within about a year or something, she was just sort of writing and completing these really beautiful little like full tunes, like proper arrangements and things. And I was so knocked out by it all. And she had at least 9 or 10 of them, and I was like, this is awesome. I was like, just come over here. And it was really a video on Instagram where she was singing a cover. It was a Bowie song. Bowie had just passed away. And I heard her doing this tune, and I was like, that's unbelievable. And I went online and actually bought her a plane ticket because I knew she was just like in England, like didn't have a job, was
not just in England, in Maidstone.
Maidstone, that's right, down in there in Kent. Yeah, and I knew it was like she's going to be overjoyed to come over here and work on some music. I know it. So we went in the studio with my friend. She was like, "What? You're crazy!" And I was like, "No, just I'd had a couple drinks or something that night, and it was like I went online to Virgin Atlantic and just bought her a plane ticket."
Wow, said, that's so lovely of you, man.
And yeah, so she came over and we did about 3 weeks in the studio, tracked all the basics, and then she came back one more time. We did some more stuff, but that was her first record. It's called Monday Green. You can check it out. It's on all the Spotify and all that. But it's really cool. But I mean, by the time the record was mixed and out, she was already like, she'd probably written another 50 tunes or something or more. And just, she's grown even so much since we did the record. So it's a great insight into what she's all about. But God, the things she's doing I mean, she's one of those people that's just like ridiculously creative and prolific. So, and you know, the recordings she's making now and producing on her own and stuff are pretty amazing. She's come so far in 4 or 5 years. It's unbelievable.
I'm sure she learned a lot from being with you in the studio and picking up tips and, watching you do stuff. And
we had a great. And I learned from her because of her, like I say, like there'd be these things where I'd hear and go, wow, that's like Brian Wilson level. She'd write some bridge or something to a song or a vocal part, and I'd be like, or a change, and I'd be like, it would make me almost uncomfortable. And I learned to just, it's like, my friend Dennis actually said to me, the hardest thing about this is going to be not to screw it up, like just to get out of the way sometimes. And I took that to heart, and I was like, that is going to be the hardest thing, because she's so deep and hears things on kind of a crazy level. So I'd hear a change or a chord progression or something, and I'd go, can you play me that? What's going on with this bridge? Show me. And she'd play it, and I'd be like, okay, play it for me again. And I'd give it like 4 or 5 listens, and I go, oh God, I see what you're doing now. Oh God, that's amazing. That's it. Or sometimes I'd be like, it's too much. You've got the minor 9 rubbing against the
yeah.
It'd be like, it's so dissonant. I can't get with it. Can we just change this one thing? Like 89% of the time, it was like just me coming around to it and going like, that is gorgeous. Like, wow. But it's like not sometimes first listen kind of stuff, but I love that.
Yeah,
remember records like that? When people used to make records you'd have to listen to, and then they'd grow on you over a week, and you'd go like,
"Oh man, honestly, Christian in my band, Christian Mendoza, is a killer guitar player, and he comes from kind of he's massively into his rock, but he comes from like a kind of jazz fusion background, and he does things like that all the time. We'll be writing a tune, literally jamming a song, and I come from a rock background, right. I listen to Dylan and the Who,
sure.
And so I'm like, how about we do like a D major there, and he's like, oh, I was kind of thinking we could do like a, F9 sharp and fifth or whatever, and it always just, you go, oh yeah, that's just so cool and so beautiful. And I'm the same, sometimes it just takes me a while to get my head around it. And then I have no idea what to write over the top of it, and he'll go, have you thought about doing this, and then suddenly we have this beautiful but weird rock song,
Yeah.
And so
that's cool. That's cool you have that. And then again, maybe sometimes the D is the right thing to do.
Right? Absolutely. Yeah. And that's
part of being in a band, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you both learn.
Yeah. How about we just do a A5 there? That would be dope.
Yeah. And what I find is that if everybody's open to those ideas, like listening, well, let's try it both ways. And you listen, you really live with it for a minute. The beautiful one, the best one usually rises to the surface. Yeah. And everybody kind of generally agrees. If you take your ego out of it and you listen and you're like, if you're just in it, both in it for the right reasons, or the whole band's in it, and you try all the different things and everybody gets their shake, and then I think this one's best. Everybody usually goes, yeah, that's the way to go. That's what I find. I love that. But you learn something in the process, and you gain the trust of the other band member by entertaining their idea, even if, and then by giving them the, oh yeah, your idea is better, and then next time they'll do that for you, because there's this trust. It's a beautiful thing if you can get that going in a band,
Totally. And what was the process of your record? I want to give it a plug because I was listening to it today while I was prepping for this, and Pete Thorn 2, you released it in 2018. It's such a cool record, man. It's an instrumental, it's a guitar record. I love the tune Rosemary on there, man. It's very Jimmy Page-esque. And
thanks.
It's super beautiful. But I just wanted to ask like how that came about. Was it just you, and who did you work with? Was there a drummer, or like how did you put that record together?
The second record, it started much like the first, where I would just record things when I had time. And sometimes I'd just be like, I hit a friend up and go, hey, do you got time on, to cut some drums today or like tomorrow or something? Cause I got, everybody's got their own studio now. So, and I'd go over to a friend's house and, so Kurt Biscara played drums, great drummer. And Matt Logg played, and my other friend Blair Cinta, a lot of great musicians. John Button played some bass. So it's just hitting up friends, Hey, you mind adding a little thing to this or that? That kind of thing. And Eric Aldanius played drums too from Billy Idol's band. He played on a few tunes. And Steve Stevens actually played bass on 2 or 3 songs. And he's a great bass player and always fun to.
Yeah.
He also did the keys on a couple of the tunes on there, some programming, and it sounds distinctly Steve Stevens, and like his, he brought some of that flavor, which I love. But really, it's pretty haphazard. Now, so I'd probably worked for it for like 2 years or something, and then my friend Dennis, same Dennis I said, I mentioned about Holly and saying, the hardest thing's going to be not to screw this up.
Yeah,
he's a producer and kind of manager, does a bunch of different stuff in the and musician in Brooklyn. He got involved, and he's like, well, why don't we do set a date, and we'll do it was when Pledge Music was still operating. They went through a big scandal right after this all went down, but we actually did a Pledge. Yeah, and we did a Pledge Music release with it, and luckily we got out with, they fulfilled their end of it, and it was okay. But right after that, man, a lot of people didn't fare well with them. But anyway, so I was really lucky. But anyway, the whole deal with Pledge was it was kind of a pre-sale thing where, you'd set a date for the release of the album, and then you'd had packages for T-shirts, and I had guitar pickups and different things, all a part of the packages of the sale. Sure. And obviously physical copies, CDs signed, and stuff like that. So all of a sudden, I had a date then, a release date, and it was about 5 months off into the future. So now I've got 2 or 3 months to really finish it,
put it together.
Yeah, and in that 2 or 3 months, I had to finish, I only had 5 tunes. And then it was okay, I've taken 2.5 years to record half this album. Now, in the next 2 months, I need to finish the other half, which was good.
Deadlines are good, man. Deadlines are good.
Sometimes it's good,
quite
right?
It's quite a diverse record, isn't it? There's quite a lot of different... you can hear all the influences and the different styles in there and stuff. It's cool.
It's definitely me, but it's and a lot of the tunes on that record started out as the demos that I do for pedal companies or things on YouTube. And I view those as demos. I'll go back and mine them for ideas musically and go, oh, that was a cool one. I'll just lengthen that into a full song, and even keep actually some of the tracks, some of the things I'd already cut, and then just lengthen it out and edit it into a full song. So that's how a lot of those tunes came about. Rosemary was actually the only acoustic song. That was actually Dennis's suggestion too. He said, "Why don't you put an acoustic song to kind of break the record up a little bit?" I thought, well, I got this thing, and I wrote it when I was 20, and I'd never done anything with it. There was actually I worked with a singer for a while, and it had lyrics. It was like a vocal part, and I just kind of turned it into a instrumental acoustic song with a melody. I had to write a little melody that made sense and stuff on guitar. But my favorite song on the record is the last one called Remember, which I sort of builds up from nothing and goes into a full, I wanted it to be a full kind of Pink Floyd epic thing at the end. But at the beginning, it starts with a single clean guitar and some atmospheric stuff going on. But yeah, so that's my favorite tune. Both my solo albums, the last songs is my favorite. I put track 10.
So people have to they have to invest to get to your favorite, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just you gotta go out on a we grew up in a time on a big note. It's you gotta go out and leave people wanting more.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I'm a singer, man. So the only thing that those records are missing is a sexy English frontman. But
hey, we'll do that one of these days. We'll do something together.
Oh man, we should. It would be a pleasure. Man, one more thing before I let you go. I've asked every guest that's been on the pod so far to do this section, which I'm calling One Night Only, which is essentially, I guess I know which you're gonna pick, but I'm letting people either pick a supergroup that they could be in for one night only, or a five-a-side football team. I don't know if you're into football much, are you?
No, nothing about your whole world of.
Do you know, it's so surprising that the musicians that have opted for the football team.
Well, you're a Manchester guy, and I know
Manchester United. Indeed.
Yeah, Liverpool was the rest of the folks in the band, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it was that constant rivalry on the road, right?
Yeah. Oh man, it's great to have it. It's great to have banter, man. That's half of football. It's that tribalism, isn't it?
Totally.
But yeah, so if you could be in any if you could pick your own band members for one night only, who would it be? Alive or dead?
Oh my God, alive or dead?
Really? I know this is putting you on the spot, but that's the point.
Jeez, dude. I kind of want to be Wow, I've got like my brain is fighting itself right now. Like there's a side of me that wants to be like in the Traveling Wilburys, and there's the side of me that wants to be in a metal band of some sort. Like, God, maybe Bill Ward from Black Sabbath, and you know, and who else? You know what I mean? There's that side of it. God, I don't know, dude. That's a hard one. I loved when McCartney did this gig, which was filmed at the Cavern in Liverpool. He got together with Dave Gilmour and Ian Pace on drums.
Yeah,
and
wow.
It was, the other fellow in the band was from the Pretenders, and I always was like, why don't they just make record? Like, why isn't that a band? Like David Gilmour with Paul McCartney and Ian Pace on drum. Like, why don't they do more of that stuff anymore?
Yeah.
Like, they used to be super groups, you know?
Yeah.
So can I just be in that band? I'm going to pick them. I'm going to kick out the fellow. I can't remember who the other fellow was that did that. They got together and they played songs by, like, it was kind of like a celebration of their, you know, Eddie Cochran and
the rock and roll stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. The stuff they grew up on, you know, and they did a show and I remember seeing it and they filmed it. And so I want to be in that band. I'm going to replace the fellow from the Pretenders.
Cool, man.
I mean, with Paul on vocals and Dave Gilmour on guitar, and I'll just play second guitar or bass or whatever. I'll be and Ian Pace on drums, because he's an underrated badass. He was like that. Yeah. He's like, well, he's kind of like the Brian May of like he doesn't get the same due, but yet, come on, give me a break. He's like, Brian May's right up there with Jimmy Page, and he should be at this, you know what I mean? Like Gilmour and...
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was that on drums, I think. Like Ian, unbelievable drummer. Anyways.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. It's been so wicked to catch up with you, my friend, and you stay safe, and hopefully
Thanks,
I'll see you on the other side of all this chaos.
If everybody hasn't caught it, watch our War Pigs video, right? Black Sabbath War Pigs.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's just been released. Yeah, it's super cool, man.
It's on the Classic Rock Show YouTube channel, and I loved it. I thought it turned out really good. And Wayne, oh my God.
Yeah, man. What a bass player, man. He's actually going to be on the podcast as well. So it's another great conversation. Yeah. I've already recorded that one. So we got that to look forward to.
Man, somebody mentioned it in the comments. They said he really captures the spirit, and he sure did. Like, he really nails I don't know, it's like in his blood that, you know, I mean, for all of us, it's like we love those tunes, you know, but something about the way he played that song. You know, you're on stage, you don't hear it, it's clear. And then when I heard the mix, I was just like, damn, he's killing that song on bass right now. Like, just ruling, you know?
Well, that's the other thing about, you know, being in a band like we are, you know, you know, being around, you know, the talent that we get to work with, it becomes normal, doesn't it? Everything normalizes. And then sometimes I'd be like, you know, at the side stage, just toweling myself down, just having a quick sip of water, whatever. And you'd be mid eruption. And I just go, fuck, that's Pete Thorn playing Eruption, you know? And, you know, so it's, you know, you have to keep reminding yourself, you know, it's super cool to be able to hang out and work with you guys, man. So once again, thank you so much, man.
Likewise, dude. So much fun. So we'll do it again once this weird time is all over with.
Absolutely. All right, man. Bye-bye. So there we have it, episode 1 of Stayin Alive with me, Jesse Smith. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. What an amazing guy Pete Thorn is. It was so cool to catch up with him. Next week's guest is none other than 80s pop sensation Carol Decker of T'Pau, so make sure you tune in for that one. Now I've got a favour to ask of you. If you enjoyed that episode, please hit subscribe, as we've got some amazing guests coming up over the next couple of weeks. But most importantly, please tell all your friends to check it out and have a listen. You can also go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also donate to help me keep making these podcasts via jessesmithuk.com. The link is in the bio. And if you or your business are interested in sponsoring this show by advertising, please get in touch via my website. Special thanks, of course, to today's guest, Pete Thorn, and to Acast for providing me with an awesome podcasting platform. This was a Jesse Smith production with music by Neil X, Mark Garfield, and me. And for now, I'd just like to say thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, stay alive. See you very soon.